Hi everyone, welcome to Birthing at Home, a podcast. I'm Elsie, your host. I've had 2 home births in April 2020 and in June 2023. I'm a mental health nurse and an ex-student midwife that has a strong passion for birth and supporting women. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of the land I'm recording on in Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. I would also like to acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have been birthing at home on country for tens of thousands of years prior to the British invasion and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. This episode is a part of a series about sharing stories from partners who have been a part of a birth at home. In this episode, we hear from Paul, a mechanical engineer and husband to Stacey, who shared her free birth story in New Caledonia in episode 7. It was awesome to hear Paul's experiences, having witnessed what he described as night and day in relation to a hospital birth and then a free birth. There were some audio issues with this episode, but I think that's what also makes this podcast real. It captures stories from everyday people, even those who have packed up all their belongings and are about to move countries. That said, if you're enjoying the podcast, please rate or review it. I've saved in my Instagram highlights how you can do this on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or if you need some more help, let me know. Here we go. Welcome, Paul, to the Birthing at Home, a podcast.
Thanks for having me, Elsie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course, thank you. So we were just talking before everybody, give Paul some grace because he's just sold his desk and he's sitting on the floor. So some of you may know the name Paul from episode 7. That was Stacey's amazing free birth story from New Caledonia. And Paul so amazingly said that he would be happy to share as a part of the partner stories that I'm collecting for the podcast. So thank you so much for sitting on the floor and recording with me, Paul. Do you want to start off by telling the listeners a little bit about who you are? Obviously, I've just said that you're in New Caledonia, but a little bit about who you are, your family, etc.
Yeah, sure. So I am a mechanical engineer by trade. I've been in the mining industry for 12 years, and that's one of the reasons why myself and we decided to move over to New Caledonia. Originally, as you would have heard, we were working and living in Kalgoorlie in Western Australia beforehand, and we had this opportunity, and so we thought it would be a great adventure for us as a family, something new, something different, with different language, different jobs. We decided to take the leap, and so we ended up moving over here. My contract originally was for 2 years. I work for a nickel mine in the north of New Caledonia. I run a team of other maintenance engineers. My days tend to be pretty long. I get up fairly early, and I'm usually out the door before Stacey and the kids are up. And I usually get back around about 5 or 6 o'clock at night. So the days are usually pretty long. And it's been a really nice time here. I think Stacey could have said quite a lot about the life here. It's very tranquil, very calm. The people here are very nice. So yeah, we've really enjoyed our time here, and we were definitely pleased to take the leap. So it's been a great experience.
Yeah, amazing. You said you're a mechanical engineer, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And so before, when Stacey had Aiden, that was in a hospital in Kalgoorlie, yeah?
Yeah, it was in Kalgoorlie. We weren't really expecting the labour to be so quick. So it sort of caught us a bit off guard. Luckily, at the time, I was at home, so that was good. And yeah, it was very quick to come on, and we were not, well, myself, I was not really as prepared as I thought I would be. I guess I was fairly naive in that sense, being our first birth. And so that really sort of opened my eyes to, I guess, a lot of the birth space.
Yeah. And so with Aiden's, like the pregnancy with Aiden, did you know much about birth or labour that first time round?
Not so much. I mean, with Stacey and I, we had done a few classes together. We watched a few videos, and I remember her buying a course for hypnobirthing. But apart from that, we were, I guess, fairly informed about what happens in terms of the labour and the different stages that you go through for labor, and then also what sort of happens in the room. So it was all very, I guess, alien to myself. I remember it was very weird for me because as soon as she went into labour, I started panicking about the car seat. So I ended up rushing at o'clock in the morning to put the car seat in the car just to find out that I actually need it for 3 days. So there were things like this that I think definitely show how little you actually understand about birth and the process, and the current system that's in place.
Yeah. And so I guess in a couple of words or so, how would you describe like that whole experience for you with Aiden, like the labor, the birth, and then afterwards with Aiden?
I think it probably goes in two stages. There was the first stage where Stacey's waters broke, and then so we weren't too sure if we needed to go to the hospital or not. And so we gave them a call, and they said, yeah, just come and have a checkup. We'll make sure everything's all good. So we ended up going into the hospital. They did the checkup. They said, look, you can either stay here, but if you stay here, then you're here for the whole time. But we recommend you go home and you stay there as long as you can. And so we decided to go back home. And during that period, it was fairly relaxed. We just took it as it came. Stacey went into the shower a couple of times. I had a little app on my phone to monitor the between contractions, and it seemed very natural. It was very calm. It wasn't busy at all, and it got to the point where we were like, okay, at what point do we need to go to the hospital? And then we sort of decided once it started getting the contractions started getting quite strong, I think it was best for us to go in. So we took the drive. I remember Stacey being very uncomfortable for the drive, and then once we got there, I guess it was completely different. It was bright lights, big room. She's on this sort of uncomfortable bed. Luckily, we knew some of the midwives, so one of them came in for us. And we personally knew, and that made things quite a bit different. Stacey got up and she was able to wander around and do some stuff, which was good. But during the labour, that's when my everything changed. It was very, I guess, hectic. I didn't quite know what to do. I remember Stacey had the gas and she was sucking on that. But then after a point, they don't let you have that. They turn that off. And I just remember these guys looking at me, and I could tell, I felt relatively helpless. I didn't know exactly what to do or how to do it. So I just did what I could, reassure, hold her hand. But I did feel very, I guess, not emasculated, just very helpless in that sense, not knowing what to do, or there was nothing I could do. And that lasted for a couple of hours, and then after that, the doc came in, and everything very quickly. She was taking the bed apart and getting scissors out and everything, and that was a real shock to me. So after that, it happened all very fast. She started directing the midwives to do things, and she started pulling the bed apart, and so it became a very noisy and busy environment for us. Then I didn't know much better, or I didn't know anything else, so I just thought this was normal. And they got Stacey to do some pushing, etc., and the baby wasn't really coming, so they had to use some suction to try and progress her. And then when it got to the point, I remember the doctor getting the scissors out and making the cut, and I was very squeamish. I was not expecting that, and again, I didn't know how to react or how to. I was just more uh, not scared, but just upset for Stacey and what she was going through, and I couldn't touch. And after that, the baby's out, and it came on top of Stacey, and she managed to get some time with her, and it was a lovely experience at that point. It was very nice. And then after that, we got moved to the room, and we spent the next 2 days there. And during that time, you wake them up, you feed them at certain intervals, and it was very regimented. And then when we got back home, we managed to relax a little bit more, and we had the help of Stacey's mum, which was nice. So that was good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you um did you really think about that experience anymore, or was it not until, having Atlas that you thought about that again, or?
Yeah, I think it wasn't until we were here and Stacey fell pregnant, and then we started talking about what options we had in New Caledonia. And I I guess I just figured, okay, we'll just go back to the hospital, we will do the same thing. And then Stacey started doing some research, and she was like, well, no, I don't quite want this. And then I was like, okay, and we started having these talks about what sort of birth that we want. And it definitely opened up a whole different array of opportunities that I was not aware of. Um, I mean, I know back in the old days, they would have given birth naturally, but I guess coming from a very mechanical field, I figured the medical industry puts all these things in place to mitigate risk, and you're always told that you do this because the risk is this, and you do this because the risk is this. And so I just felt everything was there in place to make you feel safe and make sure the outcome for the mum and the baby were the highest possible. Um, but it wasn't until Stacey started doing more and more research, started talking, that she was going to give me a little bit more information about this. And then I guess at that point, that's when I started thinking, oh, okay, so maybe it's not meant to be like that all the time. And then so when we had Atlas, the two experiences were opposite ends, shall we say? Um, yeah, they were. It was amazing. The second birth of Atlas was completely different. The atmosphere was calm. Uh, Definitely was more homely. There was no distractions, and it just felt like I guess like a safe space, and it felt very very natural for myself. We of course did some planning beforehand, and I think this really helped calm any sort of anxieties I had. Being an engineer, and as I mentioned about risk based, always wanting to have a plan B or a plan C. So we made sure that in our birth plan that I knew what we needed to do. And we made sure that during the birth I check in with her at a time when she is mentally capable. And so we followed the plan, and it was a wonderful experience. And the two differences between the first birth and the second birth are like night and day. And yeah, and I just remember after the baby came out and Stacey was lying there with Atlas in the pool, it just was serene and tranquil, and everyone was just very um, overwhelmed with happiness and content. And it was a beautiful moment for all of us.
Yeah. So before, going through that whole pregnancy experience with Aiden, and then the labor and the birth, and then, that period after, Aiden, before Atlas, you'd never heard of home birth or free birth or something like that before.
I had heard of home births and free births, but I always thought of them as risky, or I always thought of them for people that are a little bit more out there, I guess, or hippies, you could say. And if you had asked me after we had Aiden if I would do a free birth, I would have definitely have said no. That's for sure. I wouldn't have thought I would be doing that. But then I guess the more we researched and went through the journey together, the more it made sense for us as a family, given the options that we had available to us in New Caledonia.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you meet or get to know like any other dads that had been, a partner in their partner's home birth or free birth experience, or was it kind of just you, or like what did your friends have to say about it? Or
I guess it was probably a point that needs to be improved. That I didn't actively go out looking for a group of people that I could talk to about this and find out information. So I sort of winged it myself in terms of just discussing it with Stacey, and I didn't really discuss it with others. I do have a few other friends that had been through pregnancies, but they were all very medicalized um, deliveries, so they weren't, I guess, where we were aiming to. So I didn't really want to have that conversation with them because I wasn't too sure if they would be in the same mindset or if it would end up um, not changing my opinion, but I guess installing more doubt into my own thinking and um, uh, my own way of coming to conclusions. So really it was just myself and Stacey, and we worked together and the options and the research that she had done. Yeah.
yeah. And your family, did you tell them at all, or was it kind of the similar thing as your friends? Or
Yeah, it was very similar as well. So I kept that to myself, and me and Stacey both had that conversation about, do we tell our mums that we're going to have a free birth, and we had decided that, okay, we will tell Stacey's mum, but we won't tell my mum, which it is sad, but I look back at it and I still believe it was maybe the right decision for us, just knowing her. And it wasn't until afterwards that we told her, and I think I was a little bit surprised with the commentary I got back from her. It wasn't as I expected it. It was a little bit more accommodating. So yeah.
yeah, wow. Yeah, yeah. And, I remember that in Stacey's episode that, she did, or, she found lots of great resources for you guys to look into on, how to have your baby at home with no medical assistance. Was there something in particular that really clicked for you, or that, because obviously, yeah, like you've said, you've just described, one experience was quite hectic and another experience was, quite calm. They're very, very different experiences. So, like, is there something in particular that, you made you more confident, going to the other end of the spectrum?
I think at the point where I knew that we had a plan B, that definitely made me more confident, and then also knowing that we had a plan that we could follow also made me a lot less anxious in terms of making sure that she's going to be all right, making sure that the baby's going to be all right, and knowing that if that wasn't the case, that we did have something that we could fall back on. And for me, the most important thing was just making sure that Stacey felt safe and Stacey felt calm and relaxed in order to be able to do that. Because the connection between mind and body, and if you start intruding, then that can start leading to other complications, and then you end up with sort of a snowball effect. So for me, it was something that Stacey was passionate about, and I'm here to obviously support her 100% on that. And so it's just things to me that I need to get under control. So some of the risks that you hear about home birthing and free birthing, and just really trying to understand those and understand what the risks are and why I guess the hospital or the institution tries to mitigate these risks and actually how they are not, how do you say, having it in some instances and actually being more detrimental. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we all would hope that the guidelines that are put in place in hospitals are there to keep us safe, mentally safe, emotionally safe, physically alive, everybody alive and well. But at the end of the day, the policies and guidelines that are put in place are actually to protect the hospital because the hospital is, a money machine in a sense, I guess. Like it doesn't look good if somebody dies, because then somebody might say, well, I'm not going to go to that hospital, and then ultimately they lose money, or they could be sued, or whatever else. But yeah, so it's not actually in your individual best interest a lot of the time. It's there to protect themselves as a system. So yeah, when you understand risk in that context, I think it makes it a little bit easier to see that, okay, well, let's get the full picture here, because what the story that they're telling might not actually be the full truth.
Yeah, exactly. And I 100% agree with that, especially from a business point of view and them wanting to limit their liabilities and etc. And it's really, really sad because you're sort of trusting in a system that you think is meant to be there to support you. And it's sort of a bit biased to the business side more than actually to the mum and the family, which is really sad. And I guess that's when we started going through this journey and doing this research. That was one of the points that I guess solidified that this option for us here made the most sense from both a practical point of view and a risk tolerance point of view as well. So once I understood that, and once I understood all the other risks and why they are there, then it made it much easier, and I felt a lot more comfortable with going forwards with the free birth. I wouldn't say I was not nervous, that's for sure, but it was it was still not as daunting as what it appeared to be at first.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it goes to show as well the amount of trust that it required you to have in Stacey, and Stacey's ability to, have authority over her body and, know how her body works and her own confidence to be able to trust and respect that. I think, that's essential in any birth at home situation, whether you have a midwife or another medical person there, I don't know, or if you do have a free birth without a medical person there, there needs to be trust, because it's quite normal to have those nerves. I mean, it's not like you give birth every day. It's still a big life event. There's still a lot to happen. And I guess in some ways, when you understand how, I guess, delicate in a way that, triangle that you spoke about, and Stacey spoke about it as well, when you understand how delicate that is, I guess it can make you a little bit more nervous as well, because you're trying to really protect that triangle, and any sort of vicarious fear or whatever that you place on that triangle can really impact the whole experience. So I think, it's amazing what you were able to do as well, Paul, because that's a pretty big thing to go from a hospital birth to a birth without any medical assistance. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was definitely a big step, but I think it just is a combination of a bunch of smaller steps along the way, and the journey that you go through to get to there. And then so when we got to that point, it wasn't such a big step to actually to do the final thing. We had a plan. Stacey had everything written out already. I knew that I just needed to keep offering her things and taking care of her, and a few other things. I think she mentioned about me being stern on her not getting in the pool, which I know she wasn't too happy about, but
Oh, she did too. I remember that. That's so funny.
yeah, but that was one thing because we did this course in the weekend, and that was one of the key things I took away from it was this woman who does all the freebirth things saying the pool is there not for you to feel comfortable, it's to be there for birth, and that was one of the key points I took away from it. So that's all I remembered in that moment. She's like, "Can I go in?" No, that's not happening.
Oh, well, it turned out beautiful in the end. And if you want to hear more about Atlas's birth, then yeah, it's in episode 7. Paul, is there anything that you would like to add or say that you feel that might be able to help other partners, who might be considering home birth or even free birth, or have some fears around the whole thing?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it all starts first with making sure that you're honest and you have clear communication with your partner. And one of the big things that I believe we did really well was that we communicated our fears and then we talked through those. And then just making sure that you have an open mind and then using that open mind to go and explore each of these different paths or these opportunities that you come across, so that you can actually understand the reason behind certain things, the risk. And look, free birthing or home birthing might not be for every couple or every family, but then at least you know that you are informed and that you know that making is best for you and your family. And I think as long as you do those few things, the birth you have will be one that you're proud of, and that that will set you up for a lovely experience, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Thank you so much for talking with me today, Paul. I really, really appreciate it. I know that you're about to move back to Australia, sort of, and you've withstood the dodgy Bluetooth and sitting on the floor. So I really, really appreciate you coming on tonight.
No, not a problem. Thank you very much, Elsie, for having me.